Thank you, President Gallagher and Honorable Board of Village Trustees and Chief Kenny. This evening, I have the privilege to congratulate Patrick Kenny, Director of Fire and Emergency Medical Services, on his retirement following 38 plus years of distinguished service to the fire profession. Chief Kenny did not begin his career here. That was at the Tri-State Fire Department. Later, he joined the village of Hinsdale, where he rose to the rank of fire chief. He left Hinsdale in 2008 and joined the village of Western Springs as the Deputy Director of Fire and EMS, or as we say, Deputy Chief, here with Chief Bednarz. Within 2 years, he had established a reputation of a true leader. He tried to retire once before in 2010. The Illinois Fire Chiefs Association wooed him away as their Assistant Executive Director. But the actual work in the fire service is something that he missed greatest. And once Chief Bednarz retired, Pat Kenny threw his hat back into the ring and returned to the village as our chief. Pat's list of professional accomplishments is pages long. He has been heralded for his leadership and impact on professionalizing the fire service. He's one of the leading speakers in the country on the fire service and mental health issues within the fire service. Now, what is it that makes Chief Kenny a great leader? It's called passion. He has a passion for his job. If you do not have passion for your life's work, then you will not be an effective leader. I read a recent article in ICMA that said leadership is the art of influencing and encouraging others to help move an organization or community to a better place. This is evident in Chief Kenny's leadership. Here in the village, we have the paid-on-call model of firefighting, and we have one of the most successful departments in Illinois because he has a passionate belief that this is the best model for this community. We achieved an ISO rating of 2, which is very rare. ISO scores fire departments on how they are doing against its organization standards to determine property insurance costs. Many other full-time departments will never see this rating. Pat also has courage. Sometimes you are not the most popular person in the room when you suggest changes to laws that you know will cost money but save lives, such as mandatory fire sprinklers. You need to be confident in your decisions. If there is an emergency, I trust Chief Kenny's judgment. No questions asked. You also need to have compassion as a leader. Pat is one who listens. At times, he is brutally honest, which is very difficult to hear. And I thank you for that. He also has a great passion for his family. In November of last year, he published a book entitled Taking the Cape Off: How to Lead Through Mental Illness, Unimaginable Grief and Loss. It's a tribute to his late son, Sean, and his lovely late wife, Eileen. He knows it best because he has lived through it. He understands the importance of promoting outreach for mental health, grief, and loss within the public safety profession, as well in the municipal profession. By the way, his book is one of the top sellers in its category on Amazon. Congratulations. Pat, I think that this retirement is going to be a little difficult for you. I always ask our employees to provide me a written notice on their retirement, which is usually a paragraph or two. I received a 3-page, single-spaced notice of retirement from Pat. I think you needed to convince yourself that you could retire. And yes, Pat, you can retire. Because I know that you will go on and do even greater things. You need to spend time with your family, especially your darling granddaughter. And I have a feeling that you'll still be active in the fire profession. Perhaps not as active as you are now, but I will probably see your name as one of the featured speakers at fire conferences. So, where do we go from here? Not to worry. Chief Kenny has a succession plan and made sure that we have some of the finest professionals in the business. Deputy Chief Mike Kelly will become chief, and Brian Scott, currently of the Evanston Fire Department, will be joining us as the Deputy Director of Fire and EMS. I thank you, Chief Kenny, for your service. I personally thank you for your friendship and advice throughout the years. You will be missed but not forgotten. And on behalf of the village, I wish you a happy and healthy retirement. Now I'm going to ask Deputy Chief Kelly to say a few words.
Thank you, Village Manager Velkme, President Gallagher, and board members. It's hard to describe in a couple minutes the impact that Chief Kenny has had on me personally, on the Western Springs Fire Department, the local fire service, the state fire service, and the national fire service. It is a special person that has the ability to influence, mentor, teach, and counsel fire service personnel from the local level to the national level. What is even more amazing is that Chief Kenny has done this throughout his career while enduring personal tragedy that many of us could not even fathom. I've been asked often what it is like to work with Chief Kenny, and I can best explain it in a short story. I was hired as a firefighter paramedic with the Hinsdale Fire Department in May of 1988, along with 3 other firefighters, and I started their new firefighter training program. I'm not sure if any of you remember the summer of 1988, but I do. That summer, we set a record for the number of days the temperature was over 100 degrees. Pat Kenny was a newly promoted lieutenant, and he and his crew were tasked with training us new firefighters. Lieutenant Kenny was determined to make sure that we were trained properly and knew our jobs, even if it meant training in full gear on a 100-degree day. At the end of our training, the deputy chief at the time took each of us new firefighters aside and asked that if we had a choice, what shift and what lieutenant would we like to be placed with? Sorry, Pat, but only one person chose you. I chose Lieutenant Kenny because I knew as a new firefighter, he would make me the best firefighter I could be. And whether a lieutenant, a deputy chief, or as chief, Pat Kenny has consistently made firefighters the best that they can be by making sure that they were properly trained, the best they could be, and prepared both mentally and physically for the demands that this job places on a firefighter. And he's done that for one simple reason. At the end of our shift or tour of duty, he wants all of us to be able to go home to our families. I know I speak for the entire Western Springs Fire Department when I say that we will miss you and thank you for all that you have done for us personally and professionally. You certainly deserve this retirement, and we hope you enjoy the next chapter in your life. God bless. Thank you, President Gallagher. I appreciate the time to speak tonight.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Kelly. Thank you, Manager Velkme. Those are very heartfelt tributes to our chief and well deserved. And Chief, you know this is not the send off that we would like to give you, and it's certainly not the send off that you deserve. But in these times, it's the best we can do. And I hope you understand through our electronic communication how much of an impact you have made on the village, on the board, on the department, of course. And that impact will be long lasting and will serve us well. In the 9 years that you have served as our fire chief, you reshaped the entire department while maintaining the paid on call model, often, I think, just through sheer force of will. Yeah. But really, it was through your exemplary leadership, impeccable ethics, hard work, and selfless commitment. The accomplishments that Manager Velkme and Deputy Chief Kelly have highlighted don't quite capture those innate qualities that you possess that set you apart from others. These are qualities that can't be taught, but are self evident and have attracted such a high caliber of professionals to Western Springs just because these professionals know you and they want the chance to work by your side. But so many of these qualities deserve mention. For instance, your selfless devotion to duty led you to spend many extra hours above and beyond to ensure that I was as prepared as possible to face any unexpected crisis. Your calm and steady manner in the early days of the COVID crisis guaranteed our staff and board will effectively handle all of the ever shifting information, misinformation, and new rules that have been and will be thrown our way. The list goes on, and I could name so many more specific instances of your commendable and selfless leadership. But suffice it to say that those who know you and respect and admire your integrity, your loyalty, your pride in your department and its people, your humility, and your sense of humor. And you wrote a book for crying out loud. That's really quite an achievement. Maya Angelou famously said that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. There's no doubt that everyone who has had the good fortune to spend time with you has been the better for it. So, on behalf of the Board of Trustees and the residents of Western Springs, thank you, Chief, for your service. We wish you a long and happy retirement, but hope you'll find many reasons to come back and visit us often. Best to you.
Thank you, President Gallagher. I'm usually not very speechless. Those are incredibly powerful words. I thank you and the board. I thank Manager Velkme. Um, Mike and I go way back, and I couldn't even begin to tell you how lucky the department is to have him stepping up to be the leader of the organization. I came back here when I really thought I was retired. Some joke that I retire and unretire more than Brett Favre. I am actually done this time, I promise. Um, but I wouldn't come back to any place except Western Springs. I had the pleasure to work here for 2 years. I left Hinsdale from an exceptional group of people, and frankly, I was a little burned out, and I needed a restart. And Western Springs was always a group when they came on mutual aid to Hinsdale, who worked harder than anybody, and always was the last group to leave when the topics and things that you're doing practically are not very sexy. And that work ethic always impressed me. And I came here and spent 2 very, very wonderful years where I learned a lot. I learned a lot about myself, and I really did think I was done when I left. 2 years with the Chiefs, and then I had a meeting with Manager Higgins, and I had helped, along with Chief Severite, write the grant for the South Station. And I came back and we had a discussion about staffing and would I come in and just do a little consulting, and I did. And when it was all done, Manager Higgins said, "Are you sure you're done?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" I go, "I'm retired for 2 years." He goes, "No, are you sure you're done? You don't seem like you're done." I go, Yeah, I'm done." So I went home and told my wife, I said, "You're not gonna believe this silly thing that came up at breakfast this morning." And she said, "When are you putting your uniform back on?"
Mhm.
She always was the smarter of the 2 of us. And I've learned very, very much through many of these talks. And I always give the advice of make sure when you start to say thank you that you don't forget your family. And I really, Manager Velkme, I sincerely appreciate um, you mentioning them and the way that you did. I have 2 angels in heaven that look over my shoulder all the time. And one of them helped push me back to Western Springs, and my intention at that point was 5 years, and I'm gone. And I've told people this, and I really mean it. I wouldn't have come any place out of retirement except for here because of the community. I saw a tremendous amount of potential in the people who were here, exceptional individuals with skills, realizing that they were giving because they really wanted to give from their soul, not because it was their occupation only, but it was their vocation. And I've watched them grow. I was very blessed when I came back. I sat down with Deputy Chief Mayor, who was in his position at that point, who was a wonderful leader when Chief Bednarz was leaving, and asked him flat out, "If you want the chief's job, I'm really not going to put my hat in the ring because I want to see you do that." And he deserves a lot of the credit because he was a huge man and said, "If you are going to come back, then I want to be in that position." And then as time moved on, I had Assistant Chief Ogren who helped. And then when Assistant Chief Ogren moved on and retired, Chief Dillon has moved in to be an incredibly powerful leader and such a great voice in our organization. And then we went recruiting again. And when I went out and Mike was working in another department in Bartlett as an assistant chief, When I made that hire, my wife, and she was not diagnosed at this point, said to me, "That's the most valuable hire you've ever made because he's really going to help you." And so between Gary, Mike, and myself, we worked and continued. And when Gary retired, Mike moved in and we didn't miss a beat. And the final piece of that puzzle that you're going to have, who's going to be starting in a couple of weeks, Chief Brian Scott is an amazing individual. I think he makes me look pretty pale when it comes to leadership abilities. And I think the organization is going to go to another level. My always statement to all of our people has been, we can raise the bar just a little bit higher. I'm sure they are sick and tired of hearing that statement, but they have always raised it higher than I would have ever expected. And I could not be more proud to have served this village. I couldn't be more proud to stand next to the men and women who've been on this department and moved on, the ones that are on there now, because they're just exceptional people who love their community, including our contract medics who work exceptionally hard and during this very difficult year of the pandemic just really stepped outside themselves to put their lives literally on the line to provide the kind of services the community deserves. So I will stop now, or you're going to go. He really is going to go on for 45 minutes. But I want to thank all of you. I look forward to coming back in a different role and saying hello. I won't miss worrying at 2 o'clock in the morning that the phone will ring and somebody's hurt. That part I won't miss. But I will miss all the people. And I thank you so much for the honor to being able to serve as your fire chief.
Thank you, Chief. Well said. Can we please, yes, you can unmute. Let's give the chief a clap. That's to you, Chief.
Did you want me to unmute the 45 people that are sitting as attendees right now?
I think the moment's gone. but we know you're here and we appreciate your attendance. Thank you, Chief.